God has committed the governance of the earth to three categories of his sons and daughters. Number one, the priests, pastors, evangelists, apostles, and name them. Number two, the kings or leaders, those in government. And third categories of his sons and daughters, the financiers, that is business people, entrepreneurs. There are great and mighty work to be done on the earth if Jesus tarries in his return. There are great and mighty work to be done on this earth if Jesus delays in his return to the earth. These works require great financial and other resources. And these works, the resources that are needed to do this work, shall not come from government. Many of us think it is the responsibility of government to build economies. No. Financiers, businessmen, entrepreneurs are the builders of the economies of every great nation. The builders of the economies of great nations of this earth are, entrepreneurs or business persons. Billions of people globally, over 8 billion people will have population on the earth right now. Billions of these desperately need the following: shelter, that is housing, food, medicine, education, and healthcare that's both affordable and qualitative. Also, billions of people need access to transportation, the different forms of transportation of both people and goods. And then also, people need access to provision of electricity and also communication access, and likewise, provision of decent, jobs, etc., etc. Now, whenever the subject of great wealth is being discussed, a typical or average Christian, usually don't consider themselves as part of those who are called to do, to provide these services. We have been wired not to think, like that. But that's part of the grand deception Paul warns us about in the Bible. It's part of the deception of the devil, that Paul warns us about. Most of the great patriarchs of Christianity, either in the Bible or throughout contemporary history, they were great business owners and inventors. J.C. Penney, a billionaire, American billionaire, times past, was a Christian. Mr. Ford was a Christian. The owner of Standard Oil, Mr. John D. Rockefeller, the richest man, in the 19th century, an American oil mogul, was a billionaire and he was a Christian. Now, in the Bible, Abraham was a businessman. He was a cattle breeder, and he was a stupendously wealthy man. Likewise his son Isaac, likewise Jacob, the grandson. Now, Jesus himself said, "You are the salt of the earth, and you are the light of the world." Matthew 5:13-15. And meaning we are the solution providers to all the problems of this world, spiritually, leadership or government, and then economic. I believe this wholeheartedly. We've done well, the church has done well in the area of spiritual leadership or spiritual oversight. I think we've actually overdid it, because there's been an influx of charlatans into the spiritual, role. But back to what I'm talking about. How are Christians going to become super wealthy? How? By identifying economic opportunities and taking advantage of this in all those areas I mentioned: food, housing, transportation, agribusiness, education, and all of that. Name it. That's how we're going to become super wealthy, when we take advantage of these opportunities. If we're not doing anything, we will forever remain spectators and poor when others are doing what we should be doing originally. God is not a magician. God is not a magician. God does not rain down money from heaven like raindrops or like snowflakes. If you're not doing anything, there is nothing for God to bless. This is what God says. He says, "I will prosper the works of your hands." God promised to prosper the works of our hands. Whatever we do, He has promised to bless it. Psalms 1 verses 3. Wealth, therefore, is not a gift. Wealth is not gifted except by those who inherit wealth. And even this usually, in most cases, does not end well. Why? Because the dynamic of wealth, reproduction, is not mastered by those who inherit it, and so they fritter it away. Wealth is created essentially by exchanging goods, products, and services, that is value creation for money. The way wealth, is created is by exchanging goods, products, and services. When you have created value, you exchange it for money. Now, wealth is built by a deliberate and strategic approach to solving human problems or meeting human needs. Therefore, the more people you serve, that is, the more people who demand your goods, your products or services, the richer you become. So, Apple company, Apple Incorporated, produces iPads, iPhone. Hundreds of millions of people use iPhones, like myself, and so the more of us who buy all the various brands of iPhone, the more Apple becomes, rich. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg is probably the fifth or fourth richest man on earth, worth over 200 or so billion US dollars. Why? He has over 2 billion people, using Facebook as a platform. The same thing for Twitter or X. It was founded by Jack Dorsey, and one day someone knocks at his door. A certain Mr. Elon Musk says, "Hey, I want to buy Twitter from you," and he paid him 44 billion US dollars. And Jack Dorsey cashed out 44 billion US dollars. His business was sold for. Why? Because millions, tens, hundreds of millions of people use Twitter or X as a medium of communication. So that is how wealth is created. Even in the food business, the makers of Coca-Cola, because all over the world billions of people drink Coca-Cola, and so the owners become rich. Take Nigeria. Speaking practically now, take Nigeria in practical terms. We have 80% of our population wallowing in extreme poverty. Even if we use 200 million population average, 200 million as our population, 80% of that is 160 million. So 160 million Nigerians are living in extreme poverty. So in developmental terms, Nigeria is acutely underdeveloped. That is, the factors or metrics, human development indices, health, education, access to clean water, access to electricity, to good roads, all of those that define modern societies are acutely lacking or insufficient. They are not available in Nigeria. But let me focus on electricity. I used electricity, as an example because it is critical or fundamental to any development aspiration we may have in Nigeria. Electricity is critical or fundamental to any development agenda we may have. Now, we currently distribute about 4,000 megawatts of electricity, whereas that's what we distribute to homes, to businesses, to industries, to government, to everything. 4,000 megawatts. Whereas what we need on conservative estimate is 100,000 megawatts of electricity, leaving a deficit of 96,000 megawatts. To drive our development agenda, conservatively speaking, we need at least 100,000 megawatts, but we only have 4,000 megawatts. That leaves us with a deficit of 96,000 megawatts. Now, if anyone can build a 1,000 megawatts or 2,000 megawatts or 3,000 megawatts or 5,000 megawatts, power plant, you will become a US dollars billionaire. Guaranteed. I'm telling you, guaranteed. Likewise, transportation, say railways. If you can build railways in a city or intercity, either intracity or intercity, you are going to become super wealthy also. And also, export focused agribusiness. Say, for instance, you take cocoa, and rather than export raw cocoa, but you open up the value chain, so you turn the cocoa to beverages or to chocolates and all of that, and you export it, you will become super wealthy. Same outcome. Now, these examples I've given, transportation, electricity, and agribusiness, is it as easy as I say it? No. But then, what's life all about? But taking on and overcoming great challenges on our path to fulfilling our great and glorious destinies. What's life all about? If it's not to confront giants on our path, slay the giants and overcoming them and becoming successful. Now, as a roundup, as a young man growing up, in Lagos, running around the streets of Lagos, one of the first profoundly inspiring books I read that left an indelible imprint on my impressionable mind was the book titled Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Let me say this as slowly and as deliberately as I can. The ultimate ingredient for wealth creation God has given to all human beings is our minds. Our minds. The ultimate ingredient for wealth creation God has given to all human beings is our minds. Why? It is from our mind we think and speak, just like God. That's why we're different from every other animal. We can think, we can speak, we can act, we can create value. And wealth is first created in the mind before it becomes tangible. Wealth is first created in the mind before it becomes real or physical. So I urge you, think prosperity, think abundance, think wealth, think success, think possibilities. Above all, think and speak big. Think and speak very, very big. Quit going around with a small mind, thinking small stuff, clothes, shoes, bags, hair, cars, houses. Stop thinking small. Stop thinking selfish, puny stuff. Think very big. Think about solving human problems. And when you think about this, think about solving it on a global scale. I say to you, think, speak, act, find partners, and then grow stupendously wealthy. Thank you for listening. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.